Howdy and welcome to episode 8 of the 240SX 2JZ swap. In this episode, we're going to be tearing apart the R154 transmission so that we can send off the linkage and the housing to get it extended to fit in the 240SX. Furthermore, we're going to be cleaning up the engine bay now that the engine has been pulled out so that it's ready for the new 2JZ. Let's get started. Alright, so this is what we need to get extended, this housing on top of the transmission here and the linkage that's below it that connects to the actual shifter. The first thing that we're going to do to start disassembling this is take off this boot, get the C-rings that are under the shifter disconnected so we can pull this out, and then we're going to undo these 6 bolts on the housing here, and then we're going to lift that up and out. Alright, so there actually weren't C-clips under there. There were just 4 10mm Phillips head bolts. I just went off of the assumption that they were going to be C-clamps because that's what it was on the Nissan transmission, but obviously Toyota did it a little differently. So now that we have the shifter out, we're actually going to take off these 6 bolts that hold this housing on, and we're going to take off this entire rear housing so that we can get to the linkage that's underneath and pull it off and send that to get extended by some company, probably Drift Motion. Alright, so we've removed the housing. That was easy enough. So that gets sent off to get extended, as well as this little linkage fork right here. You can't just undo that bolt and slide it out because there is a, it would be blocked by whatever this thing is called right here. So you actually have to take off the whole rear housing of the transmission to be able to slide that off. So that is what we're going to do. But to do that, we have to start by taking off these Torx bit bolts. So there's 4 of them. There's 1, 2, 3, and then 1 on the top here. The problem is that when you take those out, behind them is a spring and a ball bearing. And you have to make sure you remove the ball bearing that's behind the spring, or else when you remove this this back housing on the transmission, you risk the ball bearings falling into the transmission itself, and then you'd have to take apart the entire thing to fish them back out. And the only way to do that, to get the ball bearings out, is to use a really small magnet and fish it in there and get it out. So I've actually purchased one that will, or should be able to fit in there and pull them all out. So that is what I'm going to get started with right now. Alright, so I'll do an example here for you. On top, I've just pulled off the bolt. And if I take my magnet here, you'll see that there is a spring that comes out. And way down in there is a ball bearing. So I'm going to fish my magnet down in there. It's kind of difficult because it wants to attach to everything. And there you go. That is your ball bearing right there. So you can't lose these. So put them in a bag, put them in something. Oh, it rolled away already. Okay, well, I'm going to do the rest and put them in bags. Alright, so now that we've taken out those 4 bearings, we're going to go around and undo these 14mm bolts that hold that part of the transmission on, and then we're going to take a flathead screwdriver and a mallet and kind of go around the gasket here to ease off the housing, and then we should be able to pull this fork off. And we'll be good to go. Alright, so I've already went around and undone all of the 14mm bolts that go all the way around the transmission. And I've also undone the bolt that holds this shift linkage onto its little pivot shaft type deal. So now I'm going to go around with a mallet and a flathead screwdriver and kind of pound away at the gasket until this whole section of the transmission kind of just lifts up and off. Alright, so I believe I have it loose, so I'm just going to try to lift it. Oh, there we go. There it is. Alright, so I got the shift fork off right here, but now I don't really know what I'm doing, or if I should try to put it back on. It's probably not the best idea. I'm going to just try to take it off here, I think. there we go. That is the rear housing. Cool beans. I don't know if that's the rear housing or the front housing, but that is off of the transmission, and this is the fork that is gonna be sent off to get extended, and then really you just reseal it with more fippage, the gasket maker stuff from Toyota, and you're good to go. So that is the transmission part of my day done. All right, so I've cleaned up the engine bay quite a bit, but there's something that I need to take care of. Because I've opted to delete the charcoal canister on this car, there's a problem. There are 3 lines that come off of the gas tank. There's a feed, a return, and a vent hose. And the vent hose, you can kind of see, I've snipped it, but it's right there on the firewall. It's venting to the atmosphere. And what that does is it takes built up gas tank fumes and it runs them through the charcoal canister, which diminishes all the bad fumes and whatnot, and then runs it into the intake of the car. But now that we've gotten rid of the charcoal canister, that line is just venting gas tank fumes to the atmosphere, which is not great. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna trace it back under the car, and there should be a check valve at some point where that line runs to the gas tank. And on the other side of that check valve, not the side that runs from the check valve to the gas tank, but the side that runs from the check valve to, to the charcoal canister, on that side, I am going to snip it, and I'm gonna add a little breather filter so that basically it can still vent the gas tank, but it will do so not in the engine bay, and it won't suck up debris and whatnot. So we really didn't do too much in this episode. The transmission extension was pretty quick and easy, and that's already shipped off to be extended. I spent the last couple of days really cleaning up the engine bay, which is self-explanatory, and I didn't go through the hassle of actually filming that. In the next episode, we're really going to start digging into the engine and replace the water pump, the timing belt, and the timing belt tensioner. And we're going to drill into the turbo housing on the compressor side so that we can create a source for the wastegate. Thanks for sticking around to the end, and we'll catch you in the next one.